Hey, this is Jim Graham from the Masculine Journey podcast, where we explore relationship instead of religion every week. Your chosen Truth Network podcast is starting in just a few seconds. Enjoy it, share it, but most of all, thank you for listening and for choosing the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network.
Christian Car Guy radio show.
I say this calls for action, and now, nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. You got to nip it in the bud.
This is Bill Mixon. Thank you for tuning in to Robby Dillmore's The Christian Car Guy Show. This is Robby's first Saturday of the month. I'm his sidekick and co-host then. Robby's on a well-needed vacation, and I have the pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you this morning. I have asked a new friend of mine from Mount Holly to join me this morning, Michael Holdenried. Michael has an insurance agency near Charlotte and one in Winston. Good morning, Michael. Can you hear us? Well, we'll get him tuned in a second. If you have insurance questions, please call in at 866-358-7883 or 336-896-0830, 336-896-0830. If you have any interesting insurance stories, maybe a claims question, please give us a call. When it comes to vehicles and how they work, I'm nowhere in the same class as Robby, so I like to limit my questions and answers to the things I love to do, like hiking. And if you love hiking, especially in wilderness areas, we're looking for discussions about fun family trips in the outdoors, and we would love for you to call in and share with us. If you've got a story about a wonderful hike you know of you'd like to share with others, 336-896-0830. Michael, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me, Bill?
I can. You had my blood pressure up for just a second there. It's wonderful to have you on. Michael,
Thank you so much.
How long have you been in the insurance business?
Well, I started in insurance around 2013, more on the life and financial side. Really kind of branched over to property and casualty as well in 2015. So, yeah, about 5 years now.
Yes, that's wonderful. And how did you end up in insurance to begin with?
That's a great question. So my background has always been on the financial side of things. I was a portfolio manager for 10 years for Wachovia Wells Fargo. And after that, I became a financial advisor, really utilizing life insurance as a tool to help people achieve their goals. And in 2015, I had the opportunity to become an agency owner, and that entailed becoming well-rounded in every aspect of insurance. And so that's when I started to learn more about property and casualty and home and auto policies and business insurance and everything that comes along with that.
Well, why should the listeners consider insurance important instead of a necessary evil?
That's a good way to put it. So I'm assuming, most of our listeners, they work hard to acquire, homes and cars, and it's important to protect those things. The last thing you want, and you might hear a little bit of my financial advisor side coming out a little bit, but, everyone has goals and plans, and without the proper coverage in place, those can easily be disrupted. And, so that could be a bad car accident, that could be, a fire to your home, that could be an unexpected loss. And, insurance is a tool to make sure that long-term people's plans stay in place.
I majored in insurance in college, and what they tried to drill into us is that you're giving up a little bit of money so that you have a guarantee that a problem won't be bigger than your checkbook. And,
there you go. That's good.
It's many things in life can be extremely risky. And I don't think you could get a bank to give anybody a loan if they weren't absolutely sure that if the house disappeared overnight, that they'd be able to get their money back.
That's right.
One of the topics I've always liked to drill in is that I think there's a big advantage to having a personal agent, somebody that's sitting across the table from you, somebody that you can look eye to eye and can help ask all the right questions. Do you think it's important to have a personal agent instead of one of those 1-800 numbers?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. You and I think I shared a story with you a couple weeks ago where at one of our locations we had a power outage and our thermostat disconnected. So, North Carolina summers are a little bit warm, and so our office became unpleasantly hot. And, I had to contact our energy provider, and I think after dialing, 6 or 7 1-800 numbers and being transferred multiple times to the wrong areas, I finally got to the person I needed to. And so, if you think about that for insurance, having a local agent to call or text immediately, someone that knows you, that you have a relationship with, that understands the intricacies of your policies and everything else, there's a ton of value in that. And so it's not only the convenience side, but it's really important to get insurance right as well. And I just don't feel like a 1-800 number can achieve that. And, the beautiful thing, Bill, is it doesn't cost you any more to have a local agent. And so to me, it's a no-brainer to have that relationship with someone that really has your best interest in heart.
I found when it comes to claims that there's certain circumstances where it's really not a good idea to turn in a claim if you're absolutely sure you're not going to get any money.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the way you articulate what the problem is has a great deal to do with the way the claim is looked at by the adjuster and whether the claim can be covered or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. And, policy language is complex. What's covered and what's not covered. So you're right. Presenting a claim in a certain way has value for sure, and knowing when to file a claim, to your point, has value as well. If you're a person that's going to file a lot of claims, the insurance company is going to look at that negatively, and that could affect your rate moving forward. So, yeah, those are all great points.
One thing that always seemed strange to me was if you're driving down the road and something hits your car, if it bounced off the road, then it's a collision. But if it flies through the air and hasn't hit the road, then it's called a missile. So it's just unbelievably important whether you explain that you're driving down the road and this fell from a bridge and hit your car versus I was driving down the road and I ran over something that was bouncing up and down. Because one way it's a collision claim and the other way it's a comprehensive claim. The other thing that's always frustrated me was that if you run over an animal and then you go and spray the front of the car down and get it all nice and pretty, then the chances are really good it's going to be a collision claim instead of a hitting an animal claim or a comprehensive claim.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's what the local agent is there for, to kind of guide you and, almost act as a consultant on what to do when an accident happens. Technology has helped the claims process a lot, where we can take, pictures instantly of damage and stuff like that. But really knowing the coverage parts and having someone there, I really see ourselves almost as a guide through the claims process. There's a ton of value in that.
I've always recommended to people, if you call and you talk to me and you say you had a claim, I ask them to write it down as succinctly and clearly as you possibly can. Read it and make sure that it makes sense. Then read it to somebody else before you call in and you place the claim. If you've got it written down, then you know exactly what you said. And if it comes up later, you can say, well, I know exactly what I said because I wrote it down and I read it verbatim. But if they've got a chance to call and talk to that personal agent and figure out exactly the way to explain what happened, I always like those stories about the person that said, I tried and I tried and I tried and I finally hit that person heading toward me. You've got to make sure. Another way to look at it is the picture the claims adjuster paints is based on the first sentence they hear. So once they hear you start talking, they picture whether or not it's your fault or the other person's fault and what questions have to come along. So if you can paint the right picture in the person's mind at the very, very, very beginning, then everything's going to go a whole lot better than if you're spending the next 3 phone calls trying to clarify what you misspoke to begin. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, you're portraying the real value of having a local agent right now, just with your knowledge and experience with the claims process compared to, just a call-in number, and you don't actually know the person you're dealing with. And so I think you're explaining the value really well.
Now, you mentioned a call-in number. We would love folks to call in, and you can complain or ask questions. 336-896-0830. Surely some folks out there have had an interesting claim situation, and you're wondering why something wasn't paid. And I got to tell you, I run into that. Sometimes I wonder more why some things were paid. But you've got the opportunity to call in and ask 2 agents some really good questions. Also, if you like to hike, call in and tell us about a really great family hike that you like to go on. We'll be back in just a minute, hopefully with a few callers.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Well, we will get back to insurance in a minute, but before we bore too many people, we wanted to talk a little bit about some hiking. I got to tell you, I love hiking, especially in wilderness areas. Linville Gorge is one of my favorites when it's not in the middle of the summer, and Grayson Highlands is spectacular all year round. And then there's a place called Over the Mountain Victory Trail up to the backside of Roan Mountain that's just spectacular. And then I did Stone Mountain not too long ago, which was, I sort of poo-pooed it for a while, but I did the loop at Stone Mountain, and it might be one of my top favorites. Michael, you do some hiking. You said you had a favorite you like to go on.
I do. So, Bill, I have two small boys. My oldest is 12. My youngest is 8. And we've grown fond of the Blowing Rock area. And about 20 minutes west of Blowing Rock, there's a hike called Rough Ridge right off the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I would say it's probably what would be considered a moderate hike, but there's 2 beautiful rock faces. One's about halfway up, and on a clear day you can see all the way to Charlotte. The second one, even higher up, is just breathtaking, and those are probably our family's favorite hike at this time.
I love the backside of Grandfather Mountain. It's probably a little bit tough for that age, but the Boone Fork, Daniel Boone Scout Trail is absolutely gorgeous. I guess the first half of it wouldn't be too bad. But yes, all along that area around Blowing Rock is spectacular, except during the summer when some of those trails around Blowing Rock, it's almost like walking through the mall. They're so busy.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful up there. You have, let's see, at that age, Charlotte. Where else do you go from Charlotte? I know my son's in Charlotte, and he heads in the other direction. Any other trails for that age?
That's our favorite. We do Crowder's Mountain every once in a while. I mean, that's a little bit closer, not quite as breathtaking or, the same feeling of being out in the mountains. And, part of it, especially in the summertime, is just the cooler temperatures. But, it's only 30, 45 minutes from our home, so that's something you can, do a quick day trip for.
If you don't mind a long, windy road, the Over the Mountain Victory Trail is a nice one for that age, and there's a great big barn that they turned into a place for Appalachian Trail hikers to stop at. It crosses the AT right at the backside of Roan Mountain and then goes over. That would probably be a good one for that age. The other direction you head up, it's a steep climb, but it's man, the vistas going up that area are just absolutely gorgeous. Now, there's a neat Facebook page, Hiking in North Carolina, that if I'm looking to find out more about a great trail, I'll go to. And there's an app that is absolutely spectacular that allows you to find all kinds of hiking trails close to you, called the Hiking Project, and it's free. If you download it, it will show you all the great hikes in any particular area, and then you can drill down to it, and it'll give you in detail exactly how difficult the trail is and what the things are to look for. And I found some really neat ways to spend a little bit of time. When the coronavirus hit, it was hard to find fun things to do, but I got about 100 miles of hiking in through the worst of it. Do you have a particular claim story that you can think of that made a difference in your life or in the lives of others?
I do. And, unfortunately, they tend to come from customers that aren't part of our agency. I had a
You're like
friend
me.
that
You
was
help people even if they didn't buy insurance from you occasionally.
Well, it seems like when you tell people that you're in the insurance industry, everyone kind of talks about a claim story, especially if they've had a bad one. But I have a friend that was building a custom home, and the custom builder didn't have adequate coverage to cover the cost of the build of the house. And unfortunately, they were about 2 or 3 weeks away from completion of the home, and some materials caught in fire and damaged 70 to 75% of the home to where it was obviously inhabitable after that. And, unfortunately, the builder didn't have the funds or the proper coverage to rebuild the house. And so that cost that business, they had to file for bankruptcy, and unfortunately left the builder of the house, our friends, out of pocket a good amount of money. And, it's something I think when someone's building a custom house, I'm not really sure they think, well, let me check on the home builder and make sure they have adequate coverage if something were to happen. But, to your point earlier, insurance is all about risk transfer, and you have to kind of consider, especially when it seems to be a life event, whether it's building a house, having children, whenever there's a big change in your life, there always seems like an opportunity to kind of review your current insurance plan and make sure you have the proper coverages in place.
That's a good point. I've always told people I thought it was far better to have one agent with 3 policies than 3 different agents with 1 policy, that if you're talking to them on a regular basis, that they're a whole lot more likely to know you and be able to make sure everything's covered. But more important than that is that they've got a responsibility and an obligation. If they're your insurance agent and they cover your auto and your home and your umbrella and your boat, to make sure that there aren't holes. One of my insurance professors told me the 2 best values in insurance was umbrella policies and term life insurance. The cost is low, but they cover huge, huge, huge potential financial risks. And it amazes me the number of people that deal with the 1-800 numbers, and the idea of an umbrella is never brought up. But then that's probably because most of them are running around with a lot smaller amount of liability insurance on their auto policy than is probably safe. There was a gentleman in North Carolina in Winston one time that ran over a child, did not know that he'd run over a child. The child had dashed out from behind a parked car. And I'll share a little bit about what happened right after that. It can be traumatic if you don't have the right type of insurance and the right amount, and take your breath away. So when we come back, we would love for you to call in and share a hike that you'd like everybody to know about. Or if you've got an insurance question, see you soon.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Well, we appreciate those that have tuned in. They've tuned in, and we're talking about wonderful hikes in the area that we enjoy, especially family trips. We're discussing insurance. If you've got insurance questions or particular situation you'd like to share, we'd love for you to call in at 336-896-0830. I've hiked Stone Mountain, I guess 4 or 5 times, and I would hike up to the top, and I'd take some pictures, and I'd look around, and I'd go, wow, this is just absolutely gorgeous. And then I'd hike back down, and I'd think, Grayson Highland's only an hour farther away. Well, I went back and I did the loop, and the loop at Stone Mountain was absolutely spectacular. You go down, there's a little farm that's very old. They got it fixed up, just wonderful. So you'd sit underneath and look at from this farm up at the Stone Mountain, and then there are all kinds of vistas and views and waterfalls, and it was just an absolutely spectacular way to spend 3 hours. So I felt bad that I had not thought more highly of Stone Mountain until I did that trip. But the crowds aren't bad there. There's some great camping. It's a wonderful place if you're anywhere close to Stone Mountain to go take a look, see what you think. We were talking a little bit about auto insurance, and Michael was off air mentioning that we've got a really neat, great product that's come out recently, and basically they keep track of your driving. And if you're a better driver than most, if you stop all the way. Michael, tell them about the new ways to save money on auto insurance.
Yeah, sure. So the term for what we're discussing here, it's called usage-based insurance or auto insurance. And it's really about kind of customizing insurance costs for each driver. And so insurance carriers have come out with apps that you can download on your phone, and it basically tracks your driving habits. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up right now is I know that a lot of our listeners and people right now are driving less than they normally do. And whether it's because, COVID's just changed how we, our day-to-day lives, or, I think remote working has really picked up. So a lot of people, aren't doing their daily commute to their job. Well, one of the big factors that it tracks is miles driven. And so if you're not driving as much, you probably have a good chance of receiving a pretty big discount as this app will track your driving habits. And so, one of them is called Smart Ride. Basically, you download an app on your phone, and it'll track your driving habits for a 4-month period. And what they're really looking for, Bill, is, miles driven, hard acceleration and braking, the amount of idle time, so you're sitting in traffic, and then the amount of time you're driving at night. And these are factors that the insurance company just see that increase risk. And so what it does is as you download the app and it tracks your habit, you get an automatic discount for participating in the program. And then throughout the 4-month tracking period, it provides feedback to you as the driver. And so it's a great tool to save money right now for a lot of people. And we completely recommend it for brand new drivers. If someone has a kid that's just, is becoming licensed, it's a great way for them to kind of realize their driving habits and have ownership in the auto rate, if that makes sense.
Well, it is if they're the good type new driver. Yeah, one thing that saved me a fortune was that we've got a company that one of the first ones that came up with accident forgiveness, and if it hadn't been for accident forgiveness, my wife and I would have had a much more difficult time in our marriage, and both our kids I might have sold. Yeah, but if you've got the accident forgiveness and then you've got that way to keep track and make sure that your kids are driving the way you're supposed to, you've got a really wonderful way to save a lot of money on your insurance, or the opposite. So I guess it's good to catch it early. I'm thinking of some stories back in my high school days, and I'm biting my lip because we better not go there. Credit score. Yeah, a lot of folks don't realize how important, how beneficial good payment histories are. You want to get into that a little bit because maybe people don't relate the two very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, credit score is one of the biggest determinant in your auto insurance price. And so, yeah, if you've had an improvement in your credit score, it's a great opportunity to kind of review your rate and see if there's an opportunity to get some discounts. But, yeah, the insurance carriers, they're looking for someone that makes consistent payments, obviously. They don't want delinquent payers or anything like that. And so, one of the carriers we work with, they have 21 different credit segments that they put people in. And if you fall into their top 4 or 5 segments, their prices are amazing. And so, again, going back to the local agent knows what each carrier is looking for and can help place you with one that can provide the best value to you as the consumer.
Now, the interesting thing to me is it really isn't the same credit score that the bankers look at. I've got a really dear friend who has done extremely well in life, but he never, ever, ever took out a loan. I mean, he paid cash for his house, he paid cash for his cars, and he's got, in his 70s, almost no credit history at all. And that crazy insurance credit thing just absolutely eats him up. It just makes me so mad. But there's this soup that they put together that basically they're trying to figure out whether you're going through all kinds of emotional things that are going to predict an accident. So, if your credit payment system changes, if you've been paying everything regular for a long time, and then you start missing and paying late, then they sort of figure out there are things going on in your life that might make you just a little bit more distracted than other times. But, point being, it's very beneficial to pay, especially your insurance and your other bills on time if you want the best rates out there. The other thing is if you miss an insurance payment and they have to start the insurance over again, tell them what happens when that comes about.
Yeah, that's never a good signal to the insurance carriers. So if that does happen, they certainly look at that and price that in the future insurance costs. A little bit, I think carriers have been a little bit more forgiving over the last couple months, providing, I'd say, leeway to consumers based on, just kind of the state of the economy right now and everything that's going on. But, yeah, you want to just continue to have a consistent payment stream. It'll benefit you in the long time and save you a lot of money on your auto insurance.
The other thing to keep in mind is it's a legal contract. You've got a legal contract that starts and stops either every 6 months or every 12 months. So if it stops today and you go 15 days without paying your premium, and then they're nice enough to take your money, well, in that 15-day period between the time your policy died and the time you rejuvenate it with another payment, you could have an accident and they could very easily say, no, your contract ended. We didn't get the money in time. We got the money after the accident. Now, on the other hand, they really like the idea that you gave them 15 days where, they don't have to pay anything, but they're going to go back and take your money and fill in that 15-day period. So point being, you're hurting yourself in two respects when you pay late. You're paying for something you're actually not getting, and you're preventing the discounts that go in for, you get a discount for having continuous unending coverage. So it can be very, very, very helpful to make sure that insurance bill is taken care of when it's supposed to. The other thing I've seen, and I've had people switch when they said, my car dealer swears that they called and added my car on, and I had a claim, and that other insurance company refused to pay it. Well, I tell you, don't ever leave it up to the car dealer to call in and put that car on your policy. Because once your check clears, they're more interested in the next sale. You've got a window where you can add a new car on, but that window stops on that start and stop date of that policy. And what is it now, 15 days?
It is.
So you got 15 days from the time you replaced a vehicle or you added a vehicle, but that stops at that hard, fast date when your policy renews every 6 months or a year. Point being, you want to make sure that you've got that one agent that you talk to on a regular basis, and that when you get a new vehicle, you call and add it. Now, that automatic coverage depends. So if you're replacing one vehicle with another vehicle, then when the one you replaced it with, the automatic insurance you got, which may not mean you have collision. But if it's a new vehicle, it's the most insured car in the policy. At least that's the way it works in North Carolina. We'd love to hear about your favorite hikes. If you've got a question, give us a call, 336-896-0830.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Remember, across the Truth Network this afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern Time is the live show, The Cure, with host Amy Cabo. Amy's program is about encouragement and hope, and realizing that the true cure for everything, and everything, is Jesus. Amy Cabo and The Cure today at 1 on the Truth Network. Wonderful. Please tune in. And we appreciate you tuning in today. We've been talking a little bit about auto insurance, and we've been talking a little bit about auto claims. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, there are lots of folks that will call up and want to get a quote, and they think that they don't need to answer all the questions, or they don't think they need to answer all the questions 100% truthfully. And it amazes me. Michael, have you run across a few people that have sort of forgotten about the accident they had, or their driving record, or the young driver that they really don't want to pay to insure?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's pretty common. So we've had instances where, you're providing a new quote, and, we always ask if someone's had a accident or a derogatory event, and usually it's a 3-year period. Most carriers want to look back 3 years. And, we run the quote before we actually run a motor vehicle report, and, the numbers look good. Client or the prospect agrees to move forward with the quote, and then we end up running the reports, and the price of the policy shoots up big time. And, it's something that has to be disclosed up front. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to run one over on the insurance companies. If you have a derogatory event, they're going to find it. And so it's not a perfect system either. And, there's instances where accident might pull in as an at-fault accident for a driver when really it was the other driver's fault. If we can document that and provide a police report, we can, tend to get those removed and stuff like that. So it does take a little bit of work, and, ultimately you do have to work with the agent and be truthful and honest about your claims history to be able to get the most accurate quote and numbers.
Another way to look at this, people don't really understand that this is a legal contract, and all the rules that apply to legal contracts apply to insurance. And there's something called a material misrepresentation. So if you start a contract and you leave out a key piece of material information, or if you totally misrepresent the truth, you give the other party the right to cancel coverage or the entire contract. So if you were to call up, there used to be, and there still are, a lot of companies, 1-800 companies, that they'll say, you haven't had any accidents or violations in the last 3 years, have you? And the person says, well, no, I guess I haven't. And they start the insurance, and the price is absolutely spectacular for about 2 months. And then after about 2 months, they get this great big huge bill. And the person calls up and says, what in the world happened? And they said, well, we found out about this ticket you had, or we found out about this accident you had, or we found out about this person that's got the exact same address on their driver's license. In a lot of cases, they knew that 10 minutes into the phone conversation when they gave you the quote, but they aren't going to get you to switch if the price isn't half. Well, during that window where they're waiting to let you know that the price went up, they've got all kinds of opportunities to cancel coverage. And then when the price goes up, they've got the right to go back and collect the money you owed during that window. There are a lot of 1-800 companies that just made a fortune. You ever run into that, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. And, beyond increasing the price, you never want to give, so back to your contract point, you never want to give an insurance company a reason to deny a claim. And so you always have to provide truthful information. And if you give them one reason to deny a claim, I'm not saying they're going to do it, but you want to get the coverage that you're paying for, right? That's the whole point of insurance, is to be protected when an event happens. And back to your contract point, that requires correct information. So you have to represent your claims history and the vehicles that you're insuring, the coverage that you want. It all needs to be detailed in the contract.
The 1-800 folks just love selling those small amounts of liability insurance because they make 90% of their money off that first $50,000 worth of insurance. Well, if you take what they offer, and they're clients I've had that called in and said, I switched to this 1-800 number. I said, well, did you get the exact same coverage? They said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, would you send me what they showed you? And when it comes in, I'll say, you had $500,000 worth of liability insurance with me. Well, this company's only offering you $50,000 worth of insurance. Well, what difference does that make? I said, well, other than your house and one car and half your paycheck, everything else you have is at risk if you're sued and you lose once your insurance runs out. I was talking about the gentleman that ran over this child. He is in court, and his insurance company gets up, and they write a $50,000 check, and they hand it to the judge, and they say to the client, thank you very much, we're heading on. He says, what are you doing? He says, well, you only have $50,000 worth of insurance. We're just going to go ahead and write that check, and we're going to leave. You need to go hire your own attorney now. Well, he's got to go in, and he's got to find an attorney, and the attorneys he went to talk to says, we would love to represent you, but if you lose this case, you're not going to have any money to pay us. So you need to pay us our fee up front. Well, you try to go in and get a loan, one of the questions they ask you are you in litigation? We had to go and borrow money from family and friends and everybody he could to come up with the money. Well, at the end of the trial, the judge says you owe another $250,000. And he says, well, I don't have it. It's not there. He says, well, sign this piece of paper. Well, what's this? He says, we're going to garnish your wages. We're going to take half of your paycheck and half of your spouse's paycheck until all of this is paid up. He said, well, I don't want to sign that piece of paper. He says, well, that's fine, but we're going to lock you up for contempt of court until you change your mind. Insurance is there to take care of the big problems. And sitting across the table from somebody that's looking at you, that's going to be there when you call up and say, man, I don't know where that kid came from. That's what I want, is I want a professional. Because it can cost there are cases I have seen where going from $50,000 to $300,000 can be less than $5 a month more. You
That's
seen
right.
that, Michael?
Absolutely. And yeah, what you're talking about is catastrophic risk. And, when I say that, I'm talking about like life-changing as far as, your financial future, what you can afford, possibly filing bankruptcy. So in your example, think about how much that changed that person's life. And to your point, liability insurance isn't that much more expensive to go up to higher limits. And it's really worth it to me and to most of our customers to take that catastrophic risk off the table. And especially in today's driving environment where, you know this, Bill, distracted driving is on the rise. And so we're seeing more and more accidents. And the types of accidents that are occurring tend to be, larger claims
Larger,
as well.
yes. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. You have just been a wonderful guest. I hope to have you back soon. I hope things are going wonderful in Charlotte. You have a great weekend. Thank you all for tuning into the show. And if you're in a place where you can catch Kingdom Pursuits, we have some wonderful guests coming on that show in just a few minutes. We appreciate you. Please pray for Robby and this station, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.